Dimension W, Episode 5, The Possibilities of the Dead. I think this was a cool second part. Unfortunately, the horror aspect of this episode was the last one. At least so far. They might, bring it back. I mentioned for the last episode. I'm a real sucker for horror stuff, so, I figured it was only going to be two parts, but it's still kind of sad. Cause it's like, man, I just, because of the possibilities, I would love to see how that plays out. But it was a crazy twist at the end because there were so many names thrown around of just random characters. I was so confused, and I'm pretty sure I mentioned that before. I was like, I don't know who is who because they say the names like once, and then it's like I don't remember who has the same last name or if anybody has the same last name. This random person is the daughter of someone else, which was actually a pretty great reveal. I was very surprised by that, the way they did it, which I thought was actually kind of awesome. But I was so confused until they I think they did a good job of explaining everything at the very end because it was like, all right, we have this girl who was like, we have like these two people. We see the one guy that they looked up in the last episode at the end. He's with Mira. And so I was like, all right, this guy somehow, that's still confusing to me. I mean, he changed his name, but for whatever reason, there were still two ghosts of him. So I still don't understand that part. So that confuses me, to be totally honest. But I guess there were two versions because they mentioned how he was in a different world. So I guess that version of him stayed in that world forever, and then there was the other him that continued to exist, which was the non-ghost version that he actually killed, which was his future self, kind of, because they technically split into two alternate dimensions. So he got trapped in the past world where he was saving his friends, or they basically just lived forever. But the girl, I can't think of her name, but she was never there because she died in that instance. And then in the real world, neither of them died, and I guess he kind of just, because she was plagued with nightmares and stuff about her past, but she could never actually remember what happened to her. So she was just always really messed up, but he kind of stuck around to, I believe it was to protect her, something like that, because she was starting to get the nightmares again. So it was still somewhat confusing, but for the most part, I understood what was happening, because when they first did, I was like, I still don't get how there's two versions of him, but then I was like, oh, because I guess he was always trapped in that other world and stuff. It was still really crazy, but I think they did a good enough job explaining it. And I certainly enjoyed the way that they did it because the reveal of exactly what was happening was very surprising to me. And we have the ghost starting to attack everyone. We get a very interesting little reveal in this episode as well, where the girl, whose name I totally forgot again, even though it's like a simple name, I just completely forgot what it was again. But we find out that she is connected to Loser, and she calls him Papa too, just like that boy did. So I don't know what that means. I don't know if I just don't understand that. I mean, unless he's just adopting people, unless you know he had multiple kids after his children died, or what the case was. But she called him Papa, so I was like, well, that's interesting because as soon as she said that, I was like, she's talking to Loser, like she has to be. And then they showed him far away in some costume, I forgot what it was, but like you could see his green eye. I was like, okay, that's definitely the guy. So I was like, what is his deal? Like, why didn't he join in on that? And then who the heck is this girl that's calling him Papa as well? But of course, we found out numbers were involved, so he was there as well. But I thought that was cool, and so we see that he's got more than just his son with him, if that's his real son. And I've kind of thought that before, like maybe he adopted that kid or something like that, and maybe he raised these people, raised these young children to be collectors and stuff like that to help him out. But maybe they're actually related to him. I don't know, but he knew that Albert was going to be coming after them because they were, his targets. So she takes off, and I'm sure we'll see her again since she's a collector. They'll be crossing paths. She might not with Albert as much as Kyoma and Mira, but we'll see her again. Of course, she's in the opening, so obviously we're gonna be seeing her again. But I like that little reveal. It's like, okay, it makes the Loser a little bit darker of a character, and it makes him a bit more mysterious because it's like, oh, okay, well, maybe his son survived that, or he just had a son after. But now it's like maybe he has a daughter too, or maybe none of these people are actually his children. Because who knows? We might end up seeing a bunch of random kids, and it's just like, yep, I basically just lead a bunch of little thieves and stuff like that. Even though she's working as a collector, so she wouldn't be a thief. But I thought that was a cool little nod. Like, here he is. He's clearly someone important. He's, in the shadow. Whenever someone shows up, and then the next episode, or at least the one after they first show up, they're in the shadows, and someone else is doing the work for them. They're going to be important. So I'm very excited to see how he ends up playing into this series, especially with his whole thing being getting revenge. He's going to be going up against Kioma and Albert, and considering they're the two beasts of Grendel, that might not be easy for him. But he is mostly robot. He's kind of like the flashy version of Darth Vader in a sense, because he's got like mostly like it's just his face and torso that are actually human. So he probably could withstand a bit of a fight with the two of them. Maybe not at the same time, but one on one he probably could. But I like that little nod thrown in there, like, nope, this guy's definitely important because he's got people working for him to get the numbers. So that was actually pretty cool. But like I said, the case itself I thought was pretty interesting, the way they resolved everything. We got the flashback, and we got to see exactly what went down, and just a lot of craziness all at once. Like, the guy takes off, it's like, something's really weird. He gets to the dam, and he finds out that they're going to be discharging the dam and basically just flooding the whole city. So he goes and kills a guy to stop that from happening. He runs, and he finds that the girl that he was with, the main girl, was about to be raped by this guy. Unfortunately, she was able to kill him. So he's like, you go and tell everyone what's about to happen. I'll deal with this guy. And then she slips, and I, of course, like, everyone was like, crap, she freaking fell off of, because it's raining like crazy. She slipped off of a mountainside or, roadside, and hit her head and died. Like, she, fell unconscious is what I assumed. And then, the water came in and it killed her, and that's what it looked like because he saw her in the water. And it turns out that whatever was going on there, maybe that, I'm assuming that's why she lost her memories, because the device went off while she was around it. Because people getting knocked unconscious typically doesn't, turn give you amnesia like that, but it does happen. So it could have been one or the other. But I thought it was very interesting. It's like, and he even mentions, like, it seemed like time kind of stood still. So I would assume that that's why she had amnesia, because he barely remembered what happened as he was doing it. So she was holding on to the thing, like, of course, that has to be why she got amnesia. So we find out in that time, and that's where it gets like, really confusing to me. But he thought he was saving his friends, and he was risking his life. And then he found out that basically this ghost version of him was in another dimension. It was in another world where he saved all his friends, but he never did. He actually ended up dying, and he's been living inside of this alternate world. But the real him did survive because he didn't save his friends, and he went to save her instead. So it was like they went in two different paths, where the ghost version of him did what she would do, but the real version of him did what he wanted to do, which I thought was cool. But alternate dimensions is the craziest thing. I think so far this is the craziest thing, and that's why it was so confusing, because it actually made full-on alternate dimensions, but there was still the real version of him that went on living, and he saved the girl that he was in love with. And unfortunately, that didn't work too well for her. And this ghost version of him somehow created the crystal version of her, which still existed in the real world. Just, once again, very confusing. But I guess that was his image, because that's what he was holding on to from that alternate dimension. And then, they shatter that and tell him, like, this was never her world that you were living in. It was yours that you were holding on to. So, crazy reveal. Crazy, just dimensional twist at the end. But it was actually kind of cool. And, the actual version of the girl that had the amnesia and everything, she was crying at the end when they finished all that. So I don't know if that means she remembers, but she at least felt, that feeling of when her spirit was with him. And I guess her spirit went back to her body. That was also super confusing to me, because I was like, oh, so she's there now. But then she was like, no, I gotta go. And I was like, I don't understand why that's happening, but that, whatever. It happened. I enjoyed what I understood of it. And I think it was a pretty cool episode. I actually thought it was a really good reveal. And like I said, it was still somewhat confusing, because it all happened like just, here's the answer, and it was just all at once. And when it's like splitting dimensions, and this did happen, and that also technically happened because of the dimensional split, it gets a bit confusing when you get all that information at like one time. So still a little bit confused, but what I did completely understand, I really enjoyed, and I thought it was a nice little twist. The action was definitely good for the episode. I was surprised that the three people who kidnapped the girl just got killed off. Like, they went down, and basically we saw the guy with the glasses dying, and the other two were already dead because the ghost version of the guy killed him with, like, the blood arm blade thing that he had, which was actually kind of cool. And Kiyomi's actually able to fight him because they realized that natural spring water is able to hurt the ghosts and everything. So he actually gets to fight him, and then Mira makes him realize this is what's really happening. So pretty crazy. All these alternate dimensions end up being created at the end as well. So just all insanity. But I still enjoyed this episode. I'm looking forward to what they do as far as other really crazy stuff. And there was something they mentioned in this episode. I think specifically they mentioned that they were still alive because she was dreaming of them. And I kind of mentioned that before, like maybe they could do that with other worlds. And that may have been in the last episode. I honestly can't remember if that was in the last episode. But, they mentioned that before, and it was like, that was actually, what I was thinking they could do if they wanted to do that in another part of the, planet. It could just be someone's dreaming and poof, things start up. So that actually was at least somewhat the case as to how they were surviving to begin with, is because she was still thinking of them because of the nightmares that she was plagued with. And I just thought that was really cool. And I just like the way that they kind of did it. And it's just an interesting resolution. It was definitely pretty cool. But certainly enjoyed this one. Definitely want to know what you guys thought about it though. So please comment below. Let me know your favorite parts, your least favorite parts. And because, they kind of solved everything, there's not much of a question. It was just a two-part type of thing. What I want to know is what you guys feel about the loser character now that we've gotten him with, I guess, another subordinate who may or may not be his daughter, who knows. But he's kind of showing himself as this really interesting masked figure, because we know he's been betrayed by New Tesla, but at this point it's like, oh, well, he's trying to collect the numbers, but we also know what the numbers do, and now we find out he has even subordinates, other collectors going out to get the numbers for him. So I want to know why you guys think he's doing that type of stuff. Like, what is it exactly that he plans to do with the numbers? Because I figured it was for a weapon, but now that, like, it didn't really dawn on me before, like, he's been doing it because he has the reputation as the loser, but that means, he's been doing it for such a long time. And also, I don't think I mentioned this before, but the coil number, the number was like 182 or something, and I mentioned that before. They went like super high, so they do have a ton of these numbered coils out there, so that's going to be insanely dangerous. But I want to know, what do you guys think the loser is actually planning to do with the numbers, and how big do you think his organization is, if it's an organization, or maybe it's just the boy and the girl and him, it's just the trio of them. But he's becoming, it's only like one little scene, but the fact that they put him in one little scene kind of shows just how important he is. When a character, like I said, when they show up in the shadows only, even though we've totally seen exactly who they are, and they're talking to a subordinate, it's like, alright, you have clearly become like a million times more important now because you've taken the time to hide and send someone else to do your work for you. So it clearly says a lot, but I'm not sure what it says, so I'm not sure. Yep. Stupid remote fell. But I do want to know what you guys think about this character, and of course what you guys thought about the resolution for this crazy interdimensional ghost story in general. So please comment below, let me know, and thanks for watching.